Am I the asshole? For refusing to let my roommate's boyfriend live with us after he tested me. I, 19F, live with my roommate, let's call her Ashley, 20F, in a small two-bedroom apartment. We've been friends since high school and decided to split rent when we both started college. Things were fine at first, but then she started dating Jake, 22M. At first, he was over just a couple of nights a week. Which I didn't mind, but over the past few months, he's basically moved in, eating our food, using our stuff, and not contributing a single dime to rent or bills. I finally had enough and told Ashley that Jake either needed to start paying his share or stop practically living here. She apologized and said she'd talk to him. I thought that was the end of it. Fast forward to last week. I was getting ready to head out to a late-night study group when Jake cornered me in the kitchen. He told me he wanted to test me to see if I'd be a good person to live with full-time. I was confused and asked what he meant. He said that if I wanted him to pay rent, I had to prove I was roommate material by showing I could handle sharing the space with someone like him. He then gave me a list of rules he'd want me to follow if he officially moved in, things like doing my share of the cooking, even though I already make my own meals, not bringing any guys over. I'm single, but why is that even relevant? And being respectful of his gaming time by keeping the Wi-Fi free during his streams. I laughed in his face and told him there was no way he was moving, and he got pissed and told Ashley I was being unreasonable. She confronted me and said Jake was just testing the waters, and that I should have been more open to the idea. She accused me of being jealous because I'm single and suggested I was trying to sabotage their relationship now. She's saying if I can't be supportive, then maybe she should get a new roommate, one who respects her relationship. I think this is completely insane. But Ashley and a couple of her friends are siding with Jake. They're calling me selfish and controlling. Am I the asshole? For refusing to let him move in after his ridiculous test. Update, 2 days later. Hi everyone, it's been a wild ride since my original post, and I wanted to give an update because a lot has happened. First off, I want to thank everyone who commented. It helped me see things in a completely new light. Honestly, I didn't even realize how much I was being gaslighted by Jake and Ashley until I read some of your insights. I thought they were my friends, but now I see how manipulative and toxic their behavior really is. Maybe I just hated the thought of not having any friends, but who needs enemies with these kind of friends? Not gonna lie, it still breaks my heart to realize this, and I cried a lot, but that doesn't change anything. Haha, I don't know why I'm saying this, it's just been a really emotional days. Please forgive my rant. Since our confrontation, Jake has gone full victim mode. He's been telling mutual friends that I'm trying to ruin his life and kick him out of his girlfriend's apartment. Let me remind you, this man doesn't pay rent or contribute to any bills. So calling it his girlfriend's apartment is already laughable. He's been painting me as some controlling, jealous monster who can't handle his straightforward personality. Meanwhile, Ashley is eating it up and defending him, saying I'm overreacting and causing unnecessary drama. What's worse is that I've started noticing just how much control Jake has over Ashley. She's completely bought into his narrative and is now acting like I'm the enemy. For example, she told me last night that my attitude is making it hard for them to feel comfortable in their own home. This apartment is 50% mine, but suddenly I'm being treated like an unwelcome guest. I've decided I've had enough. I've already documented everything: his constant presence, his freeloading, and now his smear campaign. I'm reaching out to my landlord this week. Most leases have clauses about long-term guests, and Jake has definitely overstayed his. As for Ashley, I don't know if there's any saving our friendship. I'm heartbroken because I thought she cared about me, but now I realize she's supporting Jake's abusive behavior. Thank you to everyone who opened my eyes to what was really happening. I'll post another update once I've spoken to my landlord and taken further action. For now, I'm just trying to reclaim my space and my peace of mind. Also, I really want to thank you for just caring and being there. This is what I needed to hear, and you all were honest and fair with me. I am very grateful for the support I got that I couldn't get anywhere else, so thank you. New updates. Hi everyone. I wanted to come back with a final update now that everything has been resolved. It's been a whirlwind, but I can finally say that I'm in a much better place, and I'm so grateful to everyone who supported me along the way. After my last update, I contacted the landlord and explained the situation. Turns out, Jake had violated the guest policy in our lease by staying over so often. The landlord was understanding and firm. Jake couldn't stay overnight anymore, and if Ashley wanted to add him to the lease, we'd need to renegotiate everything, including his share of the rent and utilities. When I shared this with Ashley, she was furious. At first she accused me of trying to sabotage her relationship and even said I was acting petty, but as the reality of the situation set in, something shifted. I think for the first time, she saw how much Jake's presence had disrupted our lives, and how much it had hurt me to my surprise. Ashley apologized. She admitted that she had been blinded by her feelings for Jake and hadn't considered how unfair her actions were. She said she needed to reevaluate things with him and asked for some space to think. Over the next week, Jake stopped coming over. Ashley and I had a long, heartfelt conversation, and for the first time in weeks, it felt like I was talking to my old friend again. She admitted that Jake's controlling behavior wasn't sitting right with her anymore and that she felt like she'd been losing herself trying to please him. And here's the best part, Ashley broke up with Jake. She realized he was manipulative and toxic, not just to me but to her as well. She thanked me for standing my ground and helping her see the situation clearly. We're still working on rebuilding our friendship, but things feel so much lighter now that he's out of the picture. The apartment is peaceful again, and I've even started redecorating to make the space feel more like home. Ashley and I are taking things one day at a time, but we've both agreed to prioritize communication and respect moving forward. I know not every story ends this way, but I'm so grateful mine did. Thank you to everyone who encouraged me to stand up for myself. It made all the difference. Without you I would be living in hell now. P.S. I kept the lock though. Stories number 2. 8th for kicking my fiancé out after, joking, he got me pregnant on purpose. I, 23F, made a post a couple days ago on here talking about a joke my fiancé made at Thanksgiving which concerned me. That post got taken down, locked. This is a repost/update. I, 23F, have been with my fiancé, 26M, for 3 years. We met whilst I was on holiday and a few weeks after, he followed me on Instagram and the rest is history. We got engaged last year and a month later found out I was pregnant. We have a beautiful 6-month-old. We hosted Thanksgiving this year and my fiancé was drinking quite heavily, and after dinner, me and my mom were talking about the wedding, which my parents are paying for. I overheard my fiancé tell my brother, who was just as drunk as him, that he needed to tie me down and get me pregnant. Before I realized what a dickhead he was, they laughed it off, but it rubbed me the wrong way because our baby was not planned. I wasn't ready for a child and we were using condoms, but after a few instances where the condom broke I decided it would be safer if I got on birth control. The first month on, because I got pregnant, we were told that could happen and he said he would pull out to be safe, but I still got pregnant. I was scared as fuck, but I personally didn't want to get an abortion. I 100% believe in the right to get an abortion, I just didn't want one, and so decided to keep the baby. I work for my dad's company and my fiancé works at a country club. Money wasn't necessarily why I didn't want a baby, I just wanted to do more before I started a family. I spoke to my fiancé about what he said and at first he said he didn't remember saying it, which was believable because of how drunk he was, but then he said it was just a joke and it was meant as a compliment because I'm so amazing. So I said okay, good, because we're getting a prenup. I was just joking, but I was also wanted to see how he reacted and he was pissed. He said why the fuck would he sign a prenup, that we have a baby together, a house together, and that he would not sign one. How we wouldn't need one because we're never separating, and that me mentioning a prenup is insulting and emasculating. I never felt threatened or anything like that, but he did make me uncomfortable and he woke our baby up, so I told him to leave, which he did. The day after I kicked him out he sent me a long apologetic message about how it was out of character of him to get loud, which it was. He's never acted like that before, and I replied saying I appreciate the apology but I still just need a day or two to think everything through. The next day he sent a bouquet to the apartment. Sunday he sent me a booking confirmation of a massage he booked for me at the club and offered to come over to watch our son and cook dinner tonight. He sent me a message saying that I'm being an a-hole and that I'm taking a meaningless joke to heart and that he's wasting money he could be saving for the wedding on the hotel. But now things that went over my head before, I'm starting to think is sus, but breaking up my family over this doesn't seem right. Am I overthinking this, being an a-hole? Stories number 3. AITH for ruining an engagement by revealing that I was raped by him 10 years ago. A little backstory is needed, so please stick with me. Growing up, I, F27, had a childhood friend, Angie, F27, who was as close as a real sister. We spent entire weekends at each other's place, celebrated family events etc. from 6Y till 18YL, even lived at her place in 2nd grade while my parents went to a nasty divorce. I learned to speak some Russian, as she is Russian, and she learned to speak some Spanish. Needless to say, her older brother and little sister were like a family to me. During our teenage years she had her 2 male best friends, one whom she started dating, and another one, Nico, now 29, who was Russian as well, whom I started dating at 17. Growing up I had issues with a heart condition. I won't bore you with the details, but I had to take a lot of meds, but got healthier starting from 16. One didn't have to take them daily but only when my heart rate became irregular, but then immediately, as it would become extremely painful, my heart would cramp, I would start to hyperventilate. All my friends knew this, Nico included, and that I would black out if my meds got taken with alcohol. I didn't smoke much or drink much growing up as a result. Since I was worried about my health and only did drink at home or in a safe setting, legal drinking age is 16 here, and I only drank wine or beer if at all. I had my first time with Nico at 17, and when my parents stayed at a retreat 2 weeks later he come over to have a date night. I did drink 1 glass of wine. But starting having health issues later, resulting in me taking my meds and being unconscious. I was a bit sore the next morning but didn't think much about it. 2 weeks later I'm informing Nico that I'm late on my period and he starts to panic, confessing he had sex with me while I was unconscious. We had it before, so he didn't think much about it. Apparently he didn't have a condom, but since I was on the pill he figured it was alright. And he also didn't come in me, but in a tissue. I felt violated and disgusted by myself. I didn't know how to describe this and only told Angie about it. I was an utter mess for a few years, and wasn't able to have sex again until 2 years later. I didn't remember any of it, but was too ashamed to go to my mom or anybody else. I didn't think of it as rape back then. I was too young to really understand what and how I was violated, and Angie told me it's alright, I should break up if I feel bad about it, but we were in a relationship and did have sex before I broke up with him the following day, and apparently he cried about his broken heart to her. As Nico and Angie were close and hanging out together a lot, they started dating a few months afterwards, and I had to see him every time when visiting her. I told her I'm not able to see him, but she didn't understand where I'm coming from. The contact stopped and we haven't texted or seen each other in years. I still followed her and her family and saw that her brother is expecting his first child. As I was extremely close with her family, I just commented on the Insta post expressing my gratitude when he reached out to me. I missed his wedding, but he wanted to ask if I would be interested in joining the baby shower, as it's been years and we've been extremely close before. He told me I was like a third little sister. I just asked if Nico will be attending as well, as Angie and him have been dating for 9 years now, and he said yes. I didn't elaborate much but just expressed that I'll send a small present if he can give me his current address, but won't be attending. He kept on pestering me what exactly happened all those years ago and why I'm not in their lives anymore. Angie told her family I'm not able to see her with an ex of mine, but her brother thought there's more behind it. This is when I think I could be the asshole. I told him the truth about what happened back then, and while I didn't know it at 17, I know now that this was rape, and I named it as such. I didn't receive any message back from him, but a few days later Angie reached out to me, furious. Nico had planned to propose during the baby shower, but Angie's brother is against it now. Having learned why I stopped the contact, she loves Nico and will stay with him, but by doing so, her brother said she is no longer a part of his life, as he doesn't want his little baby girl in the same family as a rapist. Since then I've been getting messages from old high school acquaintances, telling me I should have ignored it, and not told anybody since I didn't speak up back then. I lost the right to do so now, and am a horrible person for ruining somebody's life over some stuff he did 10 years ago when he himself was a child as well. Am I truly the asshole for speaking up? Update 1. First of all, I am immensely thankful for all the people who took the time to not only read through my story, but also comment. I read every single comment and tried to respond to as many as possible. It gave me a little bit of hope of compassion for victims of rape and also the courage to not cave to the backlash I received. Mental update. Reading all the messages defending my choices on speaking up made me realize how insecure I was on what I am allowed to do and how much I was trying to make it right to other people besides myself. This especially included Nico and Angie. All of you are right. If Nico had changed, he would have apologized, reached out or tried to make amends in some way, either when word got to him from his brother-in-law or at some earlier point in his life. My former best friend Angie should have been able to feel some sort of compassion if she had any respect for me as a human being or the time we spend together. Her reactions showed that I shouldn't hesitate on my actions. I went to therapy from 21 onwards and thought I moved on from the rape as best as I could, but I realized how ashamed I still am almost 10 years later about an incident that wasn't my fault at all. I was ashamed to speak up back then and afraid that people around me would look differently at me, and somehow I still felt bad about speaking up today. So I trying to own what happened to me now and not apologize for other people's behaviors, especially as they don't even show me respect. What happened since then? I archived every nasty message I got on WhatsApp so I wouldn't have to read them, but would have the proof if needed at a later point. Angie's mom called me the following day of the incident, crying I shouldn't have answered the phone, but during the 10 years of friendship I saw her as an aunt, almost a second mom. She always joked that while her children would run around the house doing whatever, I would always take the time to drink a tea and talk with her, showing her more love and time than her actual children. While she said she's sorry for what has been and for what I went through as a child, she couldn't believe that I would ruin Angie's happiness over something like that. With Angie's brother refusing to have Nico as part of the family and Angie standing by Nico's side, it's divided their family, and she is heartbroken. She has grown to love Nico like family as well and has known him for nothing more than a considerate young man who she knows will make her daughter happy. It wasn't nasty names or angry talk, just a heartbroken mother who faked to acknowledge my pain and saw the fault in me. Angie's mom tried to get me to apologize or to take it back, but I refused, as I don't see the fault in me with everything that has happened. I believe that Nico hasn't changed and is just hiding it better somehow. He can see how people are standing by him and supporting his behavior, so he won't have to change, and that is something I didn't wanna indulge. Angie's mom not even one used the word rape, and I tried to correct her every time she talked about it, trying to name it for her to understand better, but she would just start sobbing more, and it didn't make sense for us to continue to talk. Angie's mom used to be in contact with mine for some time, and she reached out to her after our talk. I was afraid that my mom would find out, since she's from a more conservative background. We had a long talk and I didn't get to see her, physically, yet. But she apologized for not being there for me or not making me feel like I can talk to her. I tried to calm her as best as I could, but when she asked me if my current partner knows I was used like that, I got angry. She was scared my partner would leave me if he found out, implying it was something that made me less precious or appealing. When she asked me to keep it a secret from our family abroad and in our country, I hung up. She was acting exactly the way I was afraid she would, as if it's something shameful. It was especially hard as I am trying my best to move away from the feeling of shame. She has since apologized, but it's clear that her view of me has changed. I don't yet know how to deal with it, but that's something to worry about in the next few weeks. As some of you suggested, I wrote Angie's brother, Sven, again and apologized for the mess, but am glad that it is out in the open and how proud I am that he's defending his family. I asked if his old email is still working, as I would just send a gift card. He didn't respond, but I got a message from his wife 2 days ago. She thanked me for speaking up and informing them about Nico. There were apparently had a few moments that made her uncomfortable, some jokes Nico made, and in retrospective she can see why Sven apparently informed her the moment he got my initial text. And both of them have since seen Angie but not Nico. She refuses to be in the same room or house as him, and same goes to their unborn daughter. Sven and Angie's mom has been at their place multiple times to beg to forgive Nico, and Sven caved a little. Angie and Nico will get married. Sven will attend but his wife will not. He is allowed in the family but not in contact with either Sven's wife or daughter. Those restrictions are not for Angie. Sven was suffering trying to ease his mother's worries and is not able to take a stand and cut them out completely. This is a compromise they made without his wife's approval, and she told me she's trying her best to cut them out of their life indefinitely. She wanted to move back closer to her family as well and thinks this is a perfect opportunity but isn't sure if she can follow through. His wife told me she's terribly sorry for all the issues that came my way and it has been a lot trying to handle the situation on their side. Sven knows it's not my fault but he doesn't want contact. It's hard for him to talk or see my name because even though he knows I'm not the guilty party, in some way I was the bearer or bad news, and he sees me as the start of all this drama. She told me a few times that neither believe I'm the bad guy. They just are tired with everything and it's just been extremely hard on them. That's all that has happened so far. I am frustrated about how everything came to be. It feels like Nico will just continue with his life without having to be remorseful. I didn't want him to suffer. But I think some part of me wanted to at least receive some kind of apology for all the suffering I went through afterwards. I'm having to deal with my mother and her changed, shameful view on me, and even though I'm happy it's all out, it's extremely hard to stand by my choices. My partner and my best friends both have been my shoulder to cry on during this ordeal. Especially my best friend was enraged for me, and I am extremely grateful to have both by my side right now. I'm just emotionally drained, but I'm sure it will be better once a few weeks passes. Update 2. My first post was 3 months ago and this one will be my last update for now. It is not a good one, but I sincerely wish to leave it all behind me. That includes distancing myself from this Reddit account. These posts helped me let go of my anger. Similar to a journal, and I am grateful for all the people who are enraged with me. I hope to open it again someday, with a final happy update, but for now every little pop-up is a reminder of the anxiety I am still dealing with, and I do not have the energy to deal with this topic outside of my therapy anymore. Short summary for those who don't want to read the old post: Nico raped me when I was his girlfriend 10 years ago. I didn't see it as rape back then as I was unconscious. Afterwards I broke up with him shortly after my best friend Angie from elementary school started dating him, and they have been together for almost 10 years. I couldn't bear seeing him and cut the contact with her and her family, with whom I was really close. Her brother Sven reached out to me 3 months ago after I left a short congratulation on a pregnancy picture with his wife. He invited me to their baby shower and I declined. After a lot of back and forth about him asking me and being suspicious as to why the contact broke off in the first place and why I refused to be in the same space as his sister's boyfriend, I confessed what happened back when I was 17. Afterwards his family had a huge fight, with him wanting to cut Nico out of their lives for being a rapist and his mom and sister standing by Nico. I was the scapegoat and received a log of hurtful messages from both their friends and former classmates. They called me out on ruining a man's life based on a childish mistake. Nico was 19 back then, and even Angie's mom reached out to mine. I was left to pick up my life, my mom being more ashamed than understanding, and started therapy again. I removed almost everybody tied to that incident: Sven, Angie, Nico, their family, old classmates, and only kept contact with old classmates who sended me messages of support. Update 2. I work in a very specialized field. To get the proper qualification it takes on average 6 to 8 years, bachelor, master, and then state bar to be allowed to practice. While it is not very competitive, not a lot of people choose this profession, and it is highly sought after. My current company paid for my master's and my extensive course as preparation for the bar exam, and I have been doing well there. My HR department called on me 2 months ago. Apparently they have been getting a lot of outside calls from Angie's mother and other relatives, saying I am involved in a media scandal and being a liability for the company as I don't have issues ruining the lives of men. How they could imagine this could change anything I do not understand. I work for a global company. They have owned me for years. I never had any issues prior, and quite frankly, they do not care. However, they have been getting frustrated with the amount of calls and apparently even reached out to the police, and the calls have stopped since. Nonetheless, they reached out to me to check on my mental well-being, offering to give me paid leave till it settles a little bit, and offering company paid therapy. Therapy is covered by my country's health insurance, but it is tricky to get one without waiting time. But I already had my old one on retainer and started going right after the incident. They made it clear that they invested a good amount of money in me and do not wish to lose me. I was ashamed that this part of my private life slipped into my professional when it started to influence the career I worked hard for years to build, and while my company ensured me that it would not affect the workload and clients I'm getting. Word got around, and it was clear for my colleagues that I am going through something nasty, and the company does not want to deal with it. All this stress and anxiety led me to hyper-focus on my work. I took on whatever I could, paranoid that another call would come and for whatever reason, the company would move me to dead-end department where my career would basically be over. At the same time, I started looking into different companies who would be able to buy me out, as I am tied to my current company for 5 years after graduation. 3 more are left and I got a management position in a rival company with a huge salary jump. I couldn't be happy about it. I was just relieved I wouldn't get the pity looks from my colleagues anymore. I went to the police with all the hateful messages and the HR protocol with the call history and got a restraining order for Angie's mom should she contact my new company again. I have a public LinkedIn. It is needed for my job. At least I have some sort of proof that her words hold no meaning. I got asked if I want to peruse the rape but decided against it. It would open the whole ordeal again. I don't have proof, besides Nico and Angie not denying it, and quite honestly was afraid of what it would do to my career. I did keep contact with a good friend of mine who grew up in the same small town but moved away 5 or so years ago, as we share a Nintendo Switch online family account, so we tend to be in contact at least once a year for a short phone call when she has to send me the money for the subscription, and we just tend to make a phone call with updates out of it. Yesterday was one of those days and the whole Nico thing came up. While she didn't hear it directly, her mom is still living in the small town and reached out to her, asking if I'm alright. She expressed her disapproval about how everything came to be, as she was close with Angie back in the days as well, and remembered how close we were and how often we spend time together, like sisters. She updated me that 2 months again Sven's baby girl was born, and while neither Nico or Angie were seen in any of the pictures or stories with the baby, a month ago Angie and Nico had an engagement party. Both Sven, the baby, and his wife participated, and are in the family pictures. I remember how enraged Sven's wife was, and how she told me she herself felt uncomfortable with Sven Now it is all forgotten, forgiven. Nico's parents own a few houses and gifted Angie and Nico a house close to their home, and Sven and his wife apparently bought a house in the same street. It is as if nothing happened at all. Listening to my friend telling me the updates, I'm honestly not sure if I should have asked her to not tell me anything. I just feel empty and betrayed, not by Angie, she made her choice, not by Sven, it is his sister. And at the end of the day, when he asked me what happened and then didn't have the decency to answer me because he saw me as the one who ruined his family, it was clear that the truth didn't matter. Not by Sven's wife, who has a baby girl, an innocent daughter who she should protect as a mother, even though she told me she would do her best to keep her daughter away from Nico, but just by life. I fought to have it all behind me, just to have this old wound ripped open again. 3 months ago when Sven kept plastering me, I got hate messages, but knowing that maybe someone would be hesitant towards Nico. When he showed strange behavior, made me feel like maybe I did right. Maybe by speaking up I helped a girl out to not be raped. My own mother was ashamed of what happened to me, told me I was to keep it quiet so my family abroad wouldn't get to hear it, just for it all to be all good again for Nico. After everything that happened these last 3 months, I truly understand why victims of rape chose not to speak up. Stories number 4. I cheated on my fiancée at my bachelorette party, and I don't know how to move forward. I'm writing this using a throwaway account because I don't want it linked to my regular account. I don't even know why I'm writing this here. Everyone is going to say it's rage bait and I'll get banned. I just did the worst thing that I could possibly do, and I just want to confess to everyone, but I can't. I know for a fact that the most important relationship of my entire life will be ruined. My fiancé, Alex fake name M32, and I, F28, have been together for 4 years and we're supposed to get married on the 28th of December. We had our bachelor/bachelorette parties last weekend because everyone was in town for the holiday. That's why we're having the wedding on the 28th. Everyone will be here anyway for the holiday, so coming to the wedding won't be a big thing. Alex is everything I want in a man. Editor's note: at first, she wrote, Jake is everything I want in a man. She edited it once. Comments pointed it out. He's kind, he's funny and charming, he's tall and handsome, he's helpful, he's a leader, he's successful at his work with a great future, he's really thoughtful. One time we were shopping and I looked at this butterfly decoration just in passing, and later on I got it for my birthday. He remembered that I liked it and went back and bought it for me and surprised me with it. Our sex life is very satisfying to me, and I think to him as well. He's not perfect of course, and we have our disagreements like any other couple, but we're great together. I feel safe and loved with him. When we first got together, the subject of our past partners came up. I didn't have a lot of past partners as all my relationships were long-term. I had 3 boyfriends before Alex. The previous one was Jake, fake name. Jake was gorgeous. He had a very magnetic personality and always dominated whatever room he walked into. I felt so lucky when he chose me to be his girlfriend. We had a very intense physical connection that I sort of lost myself in every other way. Jake was terrible. He cheated on me. He stood me up on multiple occasions. He forgot important events like my birthday and my best friend's engagement party. I finally broke up with him. He didn't seem to really care about it, though, which hurt. He just ghosted me when I said, enough. The reason I mention this is because I told Alex about Jake. At first he didn't connect the dots, but when I described Jake, he asked me if it was Jake. I said, how do you know? And he told me that Jake had stolen his girlfriend from high school when they were all freshmen in college. It really hurt Alex as he thought he would marry this girl. Jake later dumped her and she tried to get back with Alex, but Alex rejected her, telling me that she was disgusting. Alex was quiet around me for a few days after that, but he came around thankfully. During my bachelorette party last weekend, one of my bridesmaids, Claire, invited a bunch of our old friend group to the Airbnb we were renting as a surprise. I thought they had all moved away, but they showed up, and yes, you guessed it, Jake was there too. I was pretty drunk, but I can't say I didn't know what I was doing. Jake was still really good looking and he talked only to me that night. He only flirted with me and no one else. He was charming and my inhibitions were down, and we eventually went to a bedroom and we had sex. The next morning I was mortified. I told Jake that it meant nothing and he needed to leave and not get in contact with me again. Jake told me that he changed and was a serious person and serious about me. I told him to go and to please just shut up and leave. He seemed sad, but he left. I made sure to make him swear to forget about it all, and he did swear. I told Claire to keep quiet about it and to not tell anyone about Jake. She was the only one who really knew about our past relationship as she was part of the friend group. She agreed and said it was no big deal and one last fling before marriage. I think she was the only one who saw us go back to the bedroom, but I can't be sure. All I know is that Jake and I were the least drunk people there and we were pretty drunk. Meanwhile, it's been eating at me all the time. I can't sleep or eat. I'm afraid my wedding dress will be too big for me because I have this fear in the pit of my stomach and I throw up when I think about Jake and what I did, which is all the time. I think about it all the time. I have to confess to someone, so I think a bunch of internet strangers is the easiest way to do it. I know I'm terrible and I know I FD this up. I can't lose Alex. Why didn't I think of him when I was there last Saturday? Why didn't I consider Alex? I'm such a fucking idiot. He's the best thing that ever happened to me and Jake is the worst. Alex has started to notice my changed attitude. I lied to him, again, and told him that I think I'm coming down with the flu and that he should stay away for a few days. Meanwhile, I'm crying my eyes out in bed and Alex is being his usual great self and bringing me homemade chicken noodle soup his mom made. I can't tell him, but I can't stand this. Does it go away over time? Feel free to demean me, I deserve it. It's not fake or rage bait. I honestly wish it was. I wish this was just a nightmare. Update. Alex found out and he's done with me. I wanted to update everyone who read my original post, even though it's humiliating and painful. The truth is out, Alex knows, and the consequences have been worse than I could have imagined. I have no one to blame but myself. Thursday evening, Alex didn't come home after work. I thought maybe he was staying late, but around 9 p.m., I got a text from him. It was a photo of me and Jake kissing at my bachelorette party. No words, just the photo. I panicked and immediately texted Claire, asking if she told Alex. She replied that he deserved to know the truth. I don't think she did it to be malicious, maybe she was feeling guilty herself, but at that moment I was freaking out. I started spamming Alex's phone with calls and texts, begging him to talk to me. He left me on read. Then I logged on to social media and saw that Alex had posted that our wedding was cancelled because the woman I thought I was marrying turned out to be someone I didn't know. People started calling and messaging me, asking what was going on. I didn't know what to say. I panicked and lied, telling them we had a huge argument but that we were working it out. Meanwhile, Alex was replying to comments under his post, saying things like, "She knows what she did," and "There's nothing left to say." Friday night, Jake showed up at my apartment. He said he was sorry, claimed he didn't know Alex was my fiancé, and tried to explain himself. I told him it didn't matter. What we did ruined the best thing in my life, and I wanted Jake gone. I told him to leave and not come back. He tried to linger, saying something about how we could figure this out. But I slammed the door on him. He makes my skin crawl. Then, on Saturday morning, the hammer dropped. Alex's older brother, Mark, showed up with two of Alex's groomsmen. They knocked, came in, and started packing up Alex's things, his clothes, his personal items, even some of the furniture that belonged to him. I tried to talk to them, begging them to tell me where Alex was or how I could reach him, but they just ignored me or told me they didn't know where he was, which was probably a lie. Mark kept repeating that there was nothing to talk about. When they were done, Mark told me that Alex wanted me to keep the engagement ring. He said Alex didn't want it back because he had no use for it and selling it wouldn't make up for what had happened. He also told me Alex would be sending a check to cover my share of the cancelled wedding costs, and that his half of the lease was paid for. I begged Mark to at least put Alex on the phone with me and that he deserved some kind of closure by yelling at me and I'd at least be able to apologize where he could hear my voice. He just said Alex has all the closure he needs and to stop contacting him and just leave him alone, and I've done enough. Mark used to be so kind to me, like a big brother. He was excited about the wedding, calling himself the future crazy uncle. Now he was cold and distant, talking like I was a stranger. That was when it really hit me. Alex was gone and my life was gone too. I can't afford to stay in the apartment. Alex paid the rent and utilities while I handled groceries, cooking, and chores. I don't make enough as a personal trainer to cover everything on my own, and I let my certifications lapse months ago because we planned on me being a traditional stay-at-home wife and mother after the wedding, which is something I really wanted. I've started packing my things and will be moving back in with my parents. I haven't told them the full story yet, just that the wedding is off. They've been supportive, but I know the full conversation is coming, and it's going to be excruciating. My friends are avoiding me, too. Some have unfollowed me on social media, and Claire hasn't responded to any of my messages since she told Alex. I don't even know how to begin rebuilding my life from this. I've lost everything that mattered to me because of one selfish, stupid decision. Alex was my rock, my future, and the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it all away for nothing. I betrayed him in the worst way possible. And I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. He won't even talk to me. It's driving me crazy that I can't at least apologize to him in person. To Michael, real name, I know you'll never see this. I'm sorry. I know my apology means nothing, but I'll regret what I did for the rest of my life. You deserved so much better, and I failed you in every way that mattered. I know that when I'm old and gray, even if I find someone else, you'll always be in my heart. I love you to the moon and back, and I don't think I'll ever be able to love someone else the way I love you. There will always be some part of me that's always yours. Now, I have to figure out how to pick up the pieces. My life as I knew it is gone, and I have no one to blame but myself. Stop messaging me, I'm not reading them anyway, I've lost everything, there's no way you can make me feel worse than I already do, I'm barely hanging on to the will to live, here. Stories number 5. Am I the asshole? For not letting my parents be grandparents to my son. I might sound like a heartless person, but hear me out. When I was 22, I'm 38 now, I was sexually assaulted by a classmate at a party, I didn't know who did it, and I ended up getting pregnant. It felt like my life was over. I became very depressed and angry, mainly at my family for treating the pregnancy like it was something good. During this time, I lost my apartment, and my best friend, Rhea, moved me in with her and her boyfriend, Russell. They were incredibly supportive of me in whatever I wanted to do with the baby, abortion, adoption, etc. They took great care of me and treated me well, which wasn't unusual since I've known them since we were kids at around 6 months. I got too scared to have an abortion and told them I would just give the baby up for adoption. I decided I wanted them to be the parents because my best friend always wanted a child but couldn't have one due to complications. I sat them down and asked if they would want to adopt the baby. They were shocked and asked me a million times if I was sure. They continued to ask me throughout my pregnancy if I really wanted to be that close to the baby. And I told them yes because I didn't want to lose them. They reassured me that they wouldn't be angry if I changed my mind. Still, I wanted this to go through, and it did. After I gave birth, they adopted him. We're still very close, and I've developed an aunt/nephew relationship with him. He doesn't know I'm his mom. Russell and I have similar features, black hair and gray eyes, so he resembles Russell, and I don't plan to ever tell him. The problem now, which has existed for a while, is my family. They want to be in his life, but I'm worried they'll tell him the truth. My mom believes that family means blood, so I doubt she'd resist telling him that his biological mom is me and not Rhea. Rhea and Russell aren't comfortable with having him around my family due to past issues. I've been firm with my family, especially my parents, that he is not their grandson and that they need to understand this. I want them to focus their energy and time on the other grandkids they have, but they aren't listening. This has caused a strain on our relationship. My parents think it's unfair that they can't be in his life. And I feel like they know why and need to understand. Am I the asshole? I just need outside opinions. Stories number 6. I bought a house with my girlfriend. I am now ghosted. What do I do? My girlfriend is in the military and I contacted her leadership to try to talk to her about our home loan. Indeed, the conversation I have had with her, all she told me about the home was refinance it. I have paid most into the home and I am the one that has paid every mortgage bill and all bills are in my name. I contacted a lawyer today to see if she will be willing to take her name off the deed, but the appointment isn't until January. I am also in talks with the loan company about how to go about this. I'm mainly worried about if I want to sell in the future, her trying to get money that was put into the house, also worried about not getting approved for getting a loan in just my name. Stories number 7. I 25F and my partner 27M have been together for almost 7 years and last year something terrible happened and it has spoiled our relationship. I shared this incident last year but deleted it for personal reasons. My partner and I were on a staycation for New Year's. He wanted to relax at the hotel, while I wanted to go out for dinner to unwind after a hectic, exhausting year. He showed no interest, so we stayed in. The next morning, I was upset we didn't do anything fun and wasn't talking to him much, which led to an argument. He cornered me, got in my face, and grabbed my upper arm so tightly that it hurt. Despite telling him multiple times to stop, he didn't, and I ended up slapping him. I apologized repeatedly afterward, but he refused to acknowledge his actions. When I started apologizing, I was so scared that I kept apologizing repeatedly, and he pushed me aggressively onto the bed multiple times. People later told me this was reactive abuse and Darvo, but he has never admitted his part in it. Although we reconciled after I consistently apologized, the issue resurfaces during arguments. He blames me for my anger, calls me terrible, and uses the incident against me. I've worked on my anger issues since then, none of which have ever been violent, and haven't had an outburst in over a year. However, a few weeks ago, he brought up the same incident again, made me feel guilty, and stopped talking to me. This time, it doesn't feel like things will get better. I'm still apologizing and expressing my willingness to put in more effort, but he isn't responding when I suggest that we should part ways. He doesn't reply to that either. Stories number 8. Am I the asshole? For not taking responsibility for my husband's daughter. For context, I'm 31, my husband is 34, and his daughter is 11. Me and my husband, Kyle, got married 2 years ago, after he divorced the mother of his daughter, Leah. Leah never liked me, and constantly had attitude towards me. I still treated her kindly, cooked, and even cleaned after her. Understanding that the divorce hurt her. Kyle works from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., so I was the one who received a call from Leah's school at 1 p.m. The staff told me over the phone that she had gotten in a fight with a 13-year-old girl. Knowing I had to deal with it, I drove over to her school. The principal, Leah, the girl, and the girl's parents were waiting in the office. The principal and the girl's parents accused me of Leah's behavior, saying that I was the reason she acted out. Leah was giving me attitude, also saying that I raised her like this, and I was to blame. Obviously irritated by these accusations, I denied all their allegations, explaining that I was only her stepmom, and that I was barely involved in her life. A few moments later, Leah's real mother, Sandra, arrived and sorted it all out with the principal. Leah was suspended, so I had to drive her home. While on the drive back, she yelled at me, saying it was my fault for her suspension, and I should have taken the blame. Am I the asshole for not taking responsibility for my husband's daughter? All names in post are fake to keep personal info safe. Stories number 9. Creepy male staff kept invading our privacy on a school trip. I recently went on a residential trip where the arrangement was that girls stayed downstairs while boys stayed upstairs. Female adults usually stayed near the girls' dorms, and male adults were with the boys. However, there was a man, let's call him John, who made me feel extremely uncomfortable throughout the trip. John was on the same minibus as me. On the way there I was quiet and reserved because the younger kids were immature, so I kept to myself when I spoke to the adults. I was calm and polite. Things changed when we got to the dorms. I was assigned a room with girls my age, where I felt more comfortable. John would constantly come into our dorm without knocking, which felt invasive. He would just stand there and ask, "What are you guys doing?" It happened so often that I spoke to a friend about it, and she agreed it was weird. What made it worse was how he would single me out. He'd bend down to look at me in my bunk and even found excuses to come into the room, like making jokes about me wanting a cup. The breaking point was when I walked into the dorm one day to find my friend nearly naked, with only a towel covering her front while her back was exposed. John had been lingering outside our dorm just moments before I told her about it, and we decided I'd guard the door so no men could just walk in. This annoyed me because we shouldn't have to go to such lengths for privacy. On the last night, when we were being loud and having fun, he barged in again without knocking and started talking about reading the Bible to us. One of the girls is Muslim, so we tried to politely tell him it wasn't necessary, but he ignored us. I finally snapped and said, "It's like you're obsessed with our room because you keep coming in without knocking. You don't do this with the boys' rooms." He got defensive and claimed he already dealt with the boys' noise and accused me of acting out because others were around. He said, "You're normally quiet, don't give me verbal now." I stood up for myself, saying, "Don't make assumptions about me just because you don't know me. I'm comfortable with these people now, so I'm being myself." He dismissed me, told me to mind my business, and left me feeling shut down and disrespected. Later, he returned while one of the girls was still changing. Instead of apologizing or leaving, he turned around and insisted she was changed enough because she had a bra top on. He stayed in the room to read the Bible despite everyone asking him to leave. This whole experience left me feeling disrespected and uncomfortable. Privacy was completely disregarded, and his behavior crossed so many boundaries. Am I overreacting, or is this as inappropriate as it felt to me? Edit. On the way back home, John made another unsettling comment. He started telling a group of 14-year-olds that someone had once told him they found him attractive. The kids immediately pushed back, saying, "That's a lie, you're 40, and we're children, nobody would say that." Instead of addressing their discomfort seriously, he laughed it off and said, "I'm married, why would you say that?" even though no one had made any such claim about him. Edit. During an ice skating session, John would hold the hand of a 15 to 16-year-old girl under the pretext of helping her, even though penguins, skating aids, were available, and she wasn't that bad at skating. The girl kept trying to distance herself by leaning on the wall and avoiding conversation, but John stayed close, repeatedly talking to her and invading her personal space. Knowing how creepy he had already been, this behavior didn't feel like innocent help, it felt calculated and unnecessary. What makes it even stranger is that there was a boy around the same age who kept falling repeatedly, even with the help of the penguins. Despite this, John never went over to assist him or offer to hold his hand to guide him. Instead, he focused solely on the girl, who was clearly better at ice skating than he was. This discrepancy in his behaviors makes his actions toward the girl feel even more unsettling and deliberate. Stories number 10. My girlfriend, F21, rejected my M21 proposal because it didn't meet her expectations. For context, my girlfriend and I have been together for 6 years, and over Thanksgiving weekend I took her on a week-long trip to Hawaii with the intention of proposing to her. I even asked her parents for their blessing and showed them the ring a couple days before we left for the trip. We have talked about marriage before and we've both agreed that we want to marry each other. So the idea of it is nothing new and actually a frequent topic. The issue is that she wanted a grand wedding proposal similar to the ones you might see on TikTok, Instagram, big, marry me, letters on the beach, rose petals on the ground, lights, mariachi, etc. I was absolutely on board on doing that for her if it made her happy, but that was something to be planned at a beach back at home since I wouldn't have the resources to plan it for a trip to somewhere we've never been, especially because we booked everything as a last-minute vacation just 5 days prior. Ironically, after she sent me videos of people vacationing in Hawaii, I believed this would be a great opportunity. Though I planned to propose to her on the day we arrived, I carried the ring in my pocket all day waiting for a good opportunity to ask her, knowing it wasn't going to be a grand proposal like she had hoped. But I thought because of the circumstances she would be happy. However, we had some completely unnecessary arguments and I decided to postpone because I didn't want to do it after a bitter day. Second day there, we had booked a reservation to go parasailing. I didn't want to risk losing the ring. So I left it back at the hotel. We didn't get back to the hotel until 5 p.m. and we started getting ready to go back out in the city. By this time it was already starting to get dark. She said before that she would want a sunset proposal, and knowing that I couldn't organize any of the other things she had in mind for a proposal, the sunset was the only thing I had. I missed my chance on that, but we still went out to dinner and drinks. We came back to the hotel afterwards because she was tired, I was too. It was an eventful day. I let her rest for a bit and around 10:30 I convinced her to go on a night walk with me at the beach. This was when I planned to propose to her. We got to the beach. The city was very much still awake and the lights of the buildings and streets combined with the bright moon illuminated the ocean beautifully. We stood there hugging and kissing. Both knowing it was a beautiful and intimate moment, I started telling her how much I love her and how I want to be with her my entire life, etc. As I started to get on my knee and reaching my pocket for the ring, she stopped me. I hope you're not about to propose to me right now. This isn't what I expected. My heart dropped. I got back up and stood speechless before starting to walk back to the hotel. I was in no mood to talk about the situation and told her we should talk about it tomorrow. We talked about it the next day and she insists on me doing it again. But this time, the right way. During sunset I tell her I can't do that because she rejected me already. She tells me she didn't reject it. Just simply it wasn't how she would have wanted it to happen. We spent the next 4 days in Hawaii in a very tense state, but we had to deal with it until we got back home. We lived together and for the first night she went to sleep with her parents. Now she came back, but I don't want to be home with her there. What can be the outcome of the situation? I obviously didn't want this to happen during our vacation, but I can't see it other way. Is this a valid reason for me not wanting to be with her anymore? I also don't think it's right for me to redo the proposal. TLDR, girlfriend turned down my proposal during our vacation to Hawaii because it didn't fit her idea of a grand proposal, yet insists on me redoing it how she wants it. Stories number 11. I want to throw my whole wedding away. I am 20F and my fiancé 22M. Our wedding is in 5 months. I want to cancel the whole thing and just elope. My dad was in prison for 6 years and just got out this past May. I have been in contact with him since September. He went to prison for assaulting my mom. After she decided to divorce him, he was abusive my whole life. I have been with my fiancé for 4 years, and 2 of those years I have lived him in his family home. The other 2 we moved out and got our own place. I know I was very young. Therefore, I clung to my fiancé's mom. She healed me in a motherly way, when my mom just couldn't at the time. 6 months ago it came out that my father-in-law has been cheating on my mother-in-law with her sister for pretty much their entire marriage. Absolutely horrible. These past 6 months I have pretty much been her listener and her only friend, which was okay with me. I wanted to be there for her like she was there for me, even if that meant just listening to her feelings. I felt horrible for her. I still can't believe that any of this has happened to my fiancé's family. Since my dad got out, I, to sum up words, was afraid to be alone with him, because of the crime he committed and abandoning me and my brother at his apartment to commit those crimes. He lost any right to speak to us until we turned 18, so those entire 6 years of prison. I didn't talk to him till his last year, which was very little. I wanted my fiancé to be with me to meet him in person again, and my mother-in-law offered to be there too. Little did I know that was the worst mistake of my life. After meeting my dad, they pretty much had everything in common as far as books, spirituality, movies, hobbies, the list goes on. I thought it was awesome that they could relate to certain things, and it definitely gave me things to talk about, considering I didn't really know my dad anymore. They both immediately after meeting each other came to me separately to express how they found each other very attractive. Of course I felt uncomfortable, but I didn't try to read into it. I don't know SMH. After meeting twice, one to eat lunch and second time to go hiking, this time with just us three and not my fiancé. He had to work. They completely forgot I existed the whole time. I thought it was weird of course, but tried to not look into it. Now a month or two has passed and they have each other on Instagram. He gave her a book for her birthday, and left little notes in it for her. Okay, whatever, weird, but whatever, maybe he is just being nice. She tells me a couple weeks later that she had a dream about making out with my dad in his house with him. I guess I just didn't want to acknowledge that they felt this way. I thought because of how devastated she was over her husband that all of it was harmless. Now present time I haven't heard much from my dad, because I haven't really tried. Subconsciously I was mad at him. I acted like I wasn't. And I didn't really care that he wasn't reaching out. I didn't want to face my feelings on how much they both have bothered me. She calls me one day when she gets off work to tell me that my dad has invited her to come to his work and watch live music, and that she wants me and my fiancé to go with her. I don't respond with interest. And I think because of that she offered for my fiancé's brother and his girlfriend to come too. We could make it a family thing. When it wasn't a family thing, it was her trying to see my dad. And make it not weird. I push it off again. I know, stupid. I have an issue with addressing my feelings. I did express how it bothers me that I hadn't heard from him. But he was talking to her. She had no response to that at all. However, my fiancé expressed complete distaste with this whole idea and told her absolutely not anyone but my dad. He even saw the intentions. 2 days ago she calls me again, this time to ask if I had heard from my dad. I said no. Have you? She said he has invited her to go to a concert with him, but she denied because all she could hear was her son saying absolutely not. This took the whole day for me to really swallow my feelings. I didn't tell my fiancé at first. But then I did. It really bothered me. This time he was pissed, because she knew that I was hurt that he was speaking to her and not me, and this time she knew he didn't like this type of friendship her and my dad were starting to form. She sees no harm in her inappropriate behavior. I have tried to show so much empathy towards her, and I hate to say it but I do not feel sorry for her anymore. I feel betrayed. And I don't feel like she had me or her son in her best interest in this matter. I am so upset that I want to just undo this whole wedding plan and run away with my fiancé. I am embarrassed of my dad, I am hurt by my mother-in-law, and I sadly don't think I will ever forgive her. Stories number 12. Would I be the asshole if I cut off my sister over a parenting disagreement? My 27F sister, 29F, and I have a gaggle of children. The issue happened a couple months ago when her 4F got twine and a stick and choked my 5M. My husband, 32M, found 4F choking, trying to drag 5M while he begged her to stop. Husband separated the kids, checked son's vitals, brought him to me, cooking and doing dishes. Then went outside to calm down for 5 minutes. I notified my parents and asked it to be addressed. When husband was calm, the contraption left markings on 5M's neck for the rest of the evening. 29F is pregnant. She is usually pretty sick during pregnancies and traveled from out of state for respite right as we were about to bring it up. 29F announced she didn't feel well and needed to lay down, told our mom to watch her kids, and went upstairs. I wanted her back but was told she needed rest. Our dad handled the discipline. My parents offered to talk with her about the situation later that night. My family started loading the car to leave. 29F ran outside to say goodbye. Husband and I were still angry and didn't say anything about the issue because we wouldn't see 29F again for several months. I thought it was better to leave on a positive note. Additional context: while serving the kids dinner during the 5 minutes husband was outside, 4F was talking about bad voices in her head. Her 6M brother kept saying to listen to ones that talk about Jesus. 6M went off on a tangent about blood circles and hurting people with them earlier in the trip. I watched 6M hold 1M nose and mouth because he can't scream if he can't breathe. When 29F asked him to help the Bob stop crying days after the incident, we learned wanted 5M to come play with her instead of 6M. She choked him to force her way. In the time since then, 29F and I got into a huge argument about it. 29F doesn't trust me with her kids. I'm insistent on house rules so something like this doesn't happen again. Her kids are physical beyond normal kid squabbles. 29F and I can't agree on those. She insists the choking wasn't that bad, couldn't have hurt 5M. And I go to therapy for being too angry about my kid getting hurt. I don't want to reconcile the relationship if we can't feasibly get together. Would I be the asshole? TLDR, sister's kid choked. Mine were not on speaking terms. In the aftermath, do I cut her off? Stories number 13. I was raped 10 years ago, found out 15 years ago when I saw the video on my, now ex-husband's computer. I, 37F, was raped after a wedding by my, 42M, now ex-husband. 10 years ago, we attended a wedding out of town in which my then husband of 1 year was a groomsman. I've told 3 therapists and my best friends, but I haven't told anyone the whole story. The weekend sucked, the wedding party had a bunch of wedding-adjacent events that we weren't aware of ahead of time, so I was alone day and night prior to the wedding and the whole day of the wedding. I'm autistic and the change in plans made me anxious. At the reception, I ordered one rum and Coke, but it was grossly overpoured. After a sip, I switched to just Coke. Part-way through the reception, I got a call from my mom. My dad was admitted to the hospital with a heart rate in the 30s and EKG changes indicating a heart attack. I walked outside to talk to her, obviously upset and freaking out a little bit. My husband didn't see any of this, but one of the other groomsmen saw me go outside and followed to ask if I was okay. He brought me a Coke and got my husband. I really do not remember much of anything after this. I know there was a shuttle that we took back to the hotel. I remember saying I felt awful and didn't know why because I didn't drink. The next day, I felt absolutely terrible, headache, vomiting, just miserable. My husband told me that I drank a ton when we got back to the hotel, that I was flirting the one off the other groomsmen. So he invited him back to our room, because I could tell he wasn't going to take no for an answer, and, I thought you wanted it. He allowed this stranger to SA me orally. Then he said he had the other guy leave and he and I had sex. He took a shower after, and when he came out of the bathroom I had vomited and passed out at the time. All of this made me really uncomfortable, but I trusted my husband and I couldn't remember anything. Fast forward 9 years, we've had a child together, that makes 3 total. I had 2 before we met. Marriage isn't great, but we're working on things. I hop on his computer to print out a form and see a video thumbnail under the recently viewed. It's 40 seconds of him recording himself having sex with me while I'm clearly unconscious, from the wedding weekend. I deleted the video and tried to pretend that I didn't see what I saw. It took 5 months of therapy to say the word rape. I told him I wanted a divorce. I told him I saw the video, but I couldn't bring myself to say that knew he raped me. I still haven't said it to him. Now I'm co-parenting with my rapist and I don't know how to navigate any of this. He told everyone that we divorced due to differences in politics and religion. He went covertly alt-right and joined a cult-like church after being progressive and literally attending his grandma's church only on Easter and Christmas Eve for all of his adult life. His whole family hates me. They know everyone here, and one of my ex-in-laws retired from the place I work, so I feel like I can't tell anyone. I wouldn't even know how to tell anyone. I'm ashamed and angry, and I feel like I shouldn't be because it happened so long ago, and how could I not know? I've been diagnosed with PTSD, the hypervigilance and paralyzing anxiety are much better, but I still see my unconscious body being pushed over wherever I have to see him. Which is often. Our son is little and has asked if his dad can come to my house or I can go to his a few times. It breaks my heart and makes me feel like a bad parent because I cannot be around him without a ton of anxiety. Custody exchanges are about all I can handle. My ex asked if I wanted to meet his new girlfriend, who he started inviting over within days of me saying we should get divorced, and tried to get our son to lie to me about it. I still haven't met her a year later because I don't think I could without saying that she's dating a rapist. On the bright side, I'm so much happier. My older kids are much happier. My littlest is still the sweetest kid ever. Life feels so much easier, so much lighter now. I hadn't realized how much I shrank myself so as not to upset my ex. How much of myself I had lost in those 10 years. I tell my therapist stories from our marriage and she reminds me that none of it was normal. She's right. In hindsight, I see just how bad it was. Stories number 14. Why the professor dropped her no phones in class rule. When I was studying to be a teacher, my mentor told me a story about her early teaching days. She had a staunch, no phones, class rule. To clarify, she was a college professor, so her students were adults, not high school. One day a student's phone rang. He pulled it from his bag to check the caller, breaking several of her rules in one go. The professor stopped directly in front of his desk, and in her most snooty, I know best tone, said, "That had better be a dire emergency." To which he replied, "Yes ma'am, it is. I'm a volunteer firefighter and I'm being called to service." He was packing his bag as he said this and rushed out the door, leaving her there mouth gasping like a fish. She said she had never been more embarrassed in her life and couldn't even look at the rest of class for a few minutes. She dropped her phone policy the next day and took the attitude that these are all adults and can make their own phone decisions on what constitutes an emergency or not. She told me the story as a learning moment, just trying to spare the younger generation the same trauma. Stories number 15. People's responses to, "What are you doing right now?" messages. Trying to assemble a cat castle from Amazon but I think it's missing pieces. Female, 30s. On WebMD again, male, 40s. Sleeping, male, 30s. Waiting for the DoorDash guy to go off my porch so I can walk out and pick up my wings, male, 30s. Ick nothing. What are you doing? Female, 20s. Stalking my ex on LinkedIn, female, 30s. Trying to schedule an appointment with the Nissan guy, male 20s. Got to take a long hard look at my fantasy team, male 30s. Netflix, male 20s. Binge watching 1,000-pound sisters and eating ice cream, female, 20s. At Keenan's housewarming thing, male, 20s. Just watching TV, cleaning out the basement some WBU. Male, 40s. Going to sleep you good. Male, 30s. Online shopping with my mom for things no one has ever needed in this life or the next, male, 30s. Trying to find a hot dog place that's open or a really greasy burger, female, 20s. Just found an actual real live pay phone off South Main, male, 30s. It's actually been a hard day, male, 20s. Nothing home, female, 30s. Was trying to find a 24-hour grocery and weirdly there aren't any anymore. Male, 30s. Been thinking a lot about webkins lately, male, 20s. I'm blowing it up bro, male, 20s. Sent to different people between 9 p.m. and midnight on different days the last couple weeks, asked people what they were doing when told nothing or why, etc. I clarified I just wanted to know exactly what they were doing when they got my message. This is the second time I've tried doing this. Stories number 16. Stalked my work crush's TikTok and I regret it. So yesterday I was bored and checked to see if my work crush had TikTok. It wasn't hard to find since it was literally just her name. I went through her reposts to see if there was anything that related to me and to my surprise there was, except it wasn't very pleasant. The caption to the video was, "When you catch that guy at work looking at you," and the audio was an EU sound. Damn bro, well that's what I get for looking. I'm kinda embarrassed too because I didn't know I made it that obvious either. And you're probably wondering, how do I know it was about me? Well it was kind of obvious because I work in a relatively small store and I'm kinda new, all the other guys there have girlfriends so you know or wives. I got into work today and she was being nice to me and asking me how I was as usual but damn it how to feel about that. Stories number 17. My ectopic pregnancy horror story. I want to preface this all by saying I have always been pro-choice. This experience has cemented that belief and given me a new perspective. I've heard about ectopic pregnancies but wasn't prepared for what happened to me yesterday. This is a long story. December 7th at 9:30 p.m., I stood up after peeing and immediately felt a sensation run up my right abdomen and around my lower back. The pain was so severe I couldn't fully inhale without starting to cry. My first thought was that I somehow pulled my back. I duck walked to my bedroom and screamed for my husband. He helped me into bed and set up a heating pad across my abdomen. I stayed in bed for 2 more hours before the pain and chills had me sobbing. My husband helped me out of bed to drive me to the ER and I was screaming. The pain was so intense I nearly blacked out. I was certain I had appendicitis. We got to the ER at midnight on December 8th. My husband rolled me in on a wheelchair and I was openly sobbing from the pain. The nurses rolled me to the back where they did a urinalysis and a blood draw before moving me into the back waiting room. I got the test results back on my phone and that's when we discovered I was pregnant. At this stage, I still thought I had appendicitis. My husband and I were excited, but confused, about the pregnancy. About half an hour later, a nurse came by and offered me oxycodone. I refused because I wasn't sure if it was appropriate to take an opiate while pregnant. I asked her for Toradol. Instead she gave me a strange look and then came back with 2 Advil. My husband said he saw her move my chart from fast track to main patients. About 10 minutes later the nurse rolled me back into the main waiting room. I asked her if I would be seen soon and told her my pain was unbearable. She said, "There are a lot of sick people in front of you and we're short-staffed. We'll see you when we can." It was 2 a.m. at this point. I was writhing in pain in my husband's arms. I couldn't breathe properly and would get pain attacks that made me black out. At 5 a.m. they called me back for an ultrasound. The ultrasound was over at 6 a.m. At this point I told my husband to go home and take our dogs to his mom's house so she could watch them. I was called to the back again for another blood test around 6:30. While I was back there I overheard 2 male nurses talking about me, not realizing I was back there. One said, "She's been asking for a bed for hours." The other responded, "This is an emergency room if her appendix does rupture. At least she's already here." I wish I had said something but I was so exhausted from the pain and sleeplessness I just sat there crying. I was rolled back to the waiting room and sat there by myself until 10 a.m. crying into my hands. Finally they called me back. No wheelchair. I was forced to walk at least 300 feet to the emergency room bed and then had to get into the bed by myself. I was screaming into a blanket. By the time I was in bed I had spent 10 hours in the ER waiting room in near blinding pain. I finally, finally got to see a doctor. The doctor told me the ultrasound showed a possible ectopic pregnancy in my right fallopian tube and hemorrhaging in my abdomen. He prescribed me 4 Tylenol and told me an OB would come to see me once she was done delivering a baby. My husband still hadn't come back. I found out later he took a nap, which is fine, he really needed it. When around 11 a.m. a care team member came to get all my registration paperwork, she put my bed into an upright position and had me fill out the paperwork she left without readjusting my bed. My husband arrived around 11:30 a.m. By then I was crying again. The pressure from sitting up was causing the pain in my abdomen to crest. He went outside to call a nurse and ask where my 4 Tylenol was. She said, "Oh, your regular nurse is next door helping an actually sick patient, he'll be here soon." 30 minutes later and still no nurse. By this time I was heaving into a bucket from the pain. My husband left again to find a nurse and the same, actually sick patient. Nurse came back. My husband told her I was suffering from an ectopic pregnancy and needed the medicine. She came back with a 2-pack of Tylenol. I told her again between sobs my doctor prescribed an 4 drip. At this point, I didn't even have an 4 in my arm. She inserted 1 while waiting for the 4 drip approval. Then she moved my bed back down into a laying position and the pain near instantly dropped from a 9 to 10 to a 5. She hooked me up to the 4 Tylenol and I was down to a 3 and felt the first real relief I'd felt since 9:30 p.m. the day before. The OB came to see me around 3 p.m. and I was scheduled for surgery at 6 p.m. By the end of surgery, I learned I had a ruptured fallopian tube and about 1 liter of blood sloshing freely in my abdomen. 1 fucking liter. I'm not sure when my fallopian tube ruptured. It needed to be removed and I can't stop asking myself if the nurses had taken my pain seriously, if I would still have it. This all happened so recently and the post-surgery pain is still so severe. My husband and I want children so badly, but this experience is one of the most traumatizing things I've ever been through. The only person in this whole story who was awesome was the OB, and my husband of course. She actually took my pain seriously and signed me up for the first operation spot available. She had incredible bedside manner and consoled me, letting me know she knew how scared I was and that she would take care of me. Everyone else can go fuck themselves. ETA. This happened in Los Angeles, California. Stories number 18. Girlfriend gives ultimatum. So I've, 31M, been dating this woman, 29F, for almost 6 months now. I thought everything was going really well. We met each other's family for the holidays, but last night she starts saying that she isn't sure about us because I don't offer to pay for things like her getting her nails done, getting waxing, etc. Says she doesn't feel safe in instances where she is struggling to pay for these things and I haven't offered. Also added that people in the past she has dated offered to pay for her nails, for example after 2 dates. To be clear, I make a good living in finance, own my house, we don't live together, and paying for the things I described above are feasible. I guess I just wasn't offering as we haven't been dating for that long, and 2, she owns a business and has an income. She then extrapolated this to if we were to get married, that she would want to be effectively SAH parent and wasn't sure I'd be able to provide for us. We had discussed in the past my preference that the mother of my kids, whoever that is, would be able to be SAH initially, but eventually I'd want them to work again. She previously seemed okay with this, but last night seemed like she wasn't. So as the conversation went on, she basically was saying that if we weren't on the same page in terms of money then we shouldn't continue the relationship, that she had been in a 4-year relationship previously, that she knew year 1 wasn't going to work and didn't want to make the same mistake. TBH, I was blindsided by this conversation and thought we were falling in love. Now I feel like she's ready to just move to the next guy if I don't agree to this arrangement, which is pretty heartbreaking. Personally, I would not even imply I wanted to break up over a disagreement like this. And I said I felt that for her to even say that indicated this is a situation where I like her more than she likes me. She in a roundabout way agreed, which was also heartbreaking. Just needed to type this out. Everything was almost too good until this conversation, but feel like the proverbial mask slipped with how she went about this conversation. What would you do? Feel deep down if I have any self-respect it's over, but want other people's opinions. Stories number 19. Office worker tells all the students at school my dad died. So I was a teacher at a small private school. My father was going through some health issues at the time and I am his support person. During a staff meeting I look at my watch and received a text that my uncle had suddenly passed. We have discussed that texts are not an appropriate avenue for communicating death notices. I was upset, so I quietly packed up my things and left. I sent an email explaining the situation to the heads of the meeting. On my way out I was telling a work friend what happened and the other secretary overheard and assumed I said my father had died. That afternoon before I even got to the car she was telling my students in the afternoon school care program my dad died. They went home and told their parents. Those parents told other parents. I spent months explaining that no, my father was still alive, but thank you for caring. She never truly apologized and said, I just did what I would want from someone, because we were a small school we had no real HR and she never got disciplined. She didn't return the next school year though.